Welcome to Slayerfest 98. I'm your host, Ian Carlos Crawford, and today my co-host is newly doctored, newly mothered Scooby and writer
Kimberly and Southwick, and I'm going to introduce our very special guest today. She co-starred in Tim Burton's Ed Wood, is a recurring character on the Amazon show Bosch, and will be starring in TNT's Claws, but you may know her as Buffy's Drusilla. Introducing...
Hi there, it's Juliet Landau, and I'm really thrilled to be here today.
Hi, Juliet. It's so nice to
Hi.
talk to you and see you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Where are you guys? What part of the planet are you both?
I am unfortunately in New Jersey.
Okay.
And I am unfortunately in Alabama.
Hey, are you guys back in lockdown, or are you open?
I think New Jersey is preparing to go back. I know that I think they're about to cut indoor dining. So
They're limiting it. My mom sent me a text right before we started because my mother lives in New Jersey.
Kim and I,
In Alabama, it's Alabama. So I'm not, our mask mandate has been extended until December 11th. Not that the post office workers that I see on a regular basis follow it, but you know.
Yeah. Have all your loved ones been safe and well? Has everybody been good?
Yeah,
Good.
Kim and I both have some Fox Newsy relatives, but other than that, everyone's being pretty good. How about you?
Yes, thankfully, my husband and I are safe and well, and we've been quarantined. And I just actually have been shooting again, both on Claws and a film called Penumbra. And I just got back literally very late last night from the desert shooting, and they were very COVID safe. Did all the protocols, and all of that stuff. So.
We have a friend that works he does light set dressing for movies, and he said that they've started, but it's they're tested 3 times a week, and it's very
Everybody says it. I mean, obviously the actors, we can't. I was working with Jake Busey, and we can't wear masks, but everybody else was masked and gloved and had been tested and then retested, and so all that stuff was, it's just a different way of working, obviously, at the moment.
Yeah. So Juliet, you have something that you're promoting, A Place Among the Dead. Do you want to tell us about it? I've watched the trailer. It looks crazy intense. I can't wait to see it. Tell us all about it.
Thank you. Yes, it is my feature directorial debut. It's called A Place Among the Dead. I star in the movie, and we have an incredible cast. I play an alter ego version of myself, as does Gary Oldman, Ron Perlman, Robert Patrick, Lance Henriksen, Joss Whedon, and best-selling authors Charlaine Harris and Anne Rice appearing for the first time ever in a movie. And so we're actually playing at Lumley theaters across the US right now. We have our worldwide release December 14th, and we're doing these special preview screening events where we get to screen the movie, have Q&As, and hang out with the audience on Zoom, and they've been really amazing. Our next one is WhedonCon, and it is with the Sophie Lancaster Foundation. We're also raising money for Sophie charity, and it's going to be on November 21st, so a Saturday coming up. So hopefully, and if you guys, by the way, if you guys want to come, I'll get you some comp tickets, because I'd love for you guys to see the movie, and we can hang out and talk about it afterwards.
Oh, thanks.
I really want to see it. I listened to an interview that you did where you were talking about a little bit about how people's childhood traumas are an important part of what's going on there, and something that you said about people being evil, and also there was something else you said about trauma, and it sounded like somebody I know that had gone through a very similar thing. So then I went and I read all about it, and I was like, oh, I have to watch that, and then talk with this other person about it, because I think that we both really benefit from seeing it. So thank you for making a movie about something like that. It sounds like a fun movie too, despite it sounds like it has an interesting format despite the difficult subject matter.
Exactly. I wanted to use genre to make an entertaining movie, and also to give voice to what has affected many, to use art and entertainment to provoke this discussion. And it's been really incredible what's been happening so far. And, it's really all about the repercussions of growing up under the sway of narcissism and evil. And obviously narcissism is escalating in our society, and the conversations that have been happening, the dialogue is just so necessary at this moment in particular, where cruelty and bad behavior and narcissism is becoming more and more prevalent. And the thing that's been wild is, we're looking at it in a familial context, parenting and how you carry that with you, and it affects all of your choices. But people are relating to it. It could be a partner, it could be your husband, it could be a boss, it can be a friend, it can be our world leaders. So we're all dealing with this on a deep level. So it's been really wonderful. I can't wait for you guys to see it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I also really like, because when I first started hearing about your project, I was thinking it was just like a straight up documentary, but I like that you went with like everyone's playing like a different version of themselves.
Yeah, it's entirely scripted. We do this meld, so it's fact, fiction, and fantastical, but even the interview sections completely scripted. We worked with each of our brilliant artists to capture their voices and their viewpoints to make it realistic, but for it to look totally like it was off the cuff and they were doing it at the moment when it was completely scripted. And so there was a lot of fun in creating that. And the movies, it's pretty, I sort of use genre to lull the audience into a sense of safety to explore unsafe and radical ideas. It's pretty, what you were saying about seeing the trailer and it being scary. It's psychologically scary. It's, often things that are real can be more terrifying than monsters. The real monsters in life can be more terrifying. So, that's some of the stuff that we're playing with and looking at here.
What was it like getting folks that like weren't necessarily actors, like Joss and Anne Rice and like Charlene Harris? Like, what was that like?
Incredible. I mean, the thing is first of all, every single person we asked said yes. It was the most serendipitous, process. I think they really believed in the message of the movie and the vision that I had for it. And it was one of those things where it felt like this is meant to happen. It has to be made because everybody is saying yes. And we wanted this group of brilliant artists who all have ties to the vampire genre. Joss said yes immediately, and it was wonderful working with them. And they all, the thing is people keep thinking that the interviews are not scripted. So it is a testament to their acting, because they seem completely like they're coming up with it at the moment. And it was very cute when I was directing and working with Gary Oldman, is because in between every take, he would say like, do you think it's realistic? And I said, yes, it's great. And he said, well, but like, does it seem natural? And I said, and then he go, but does it feel like me? And I said, yes. And then there was a certain point where he kept checking. And finally I said, Gary, I really think that you have this acting thing down.
You're like, I think you know what you're doing.
Right. And by the way, we also got to work with, there's a character in the movie that Gary's mom, Kay Oldman, plays, and she had always wanted to be an actress. She's passed away since then, and so it's so amazing that we have her immortalized in the movie. And she's wonderful. She's so expressive, and it was adorable. He drove her to set. He was running lines with her. He was working with her, and she's just amazing in it, and has the most, like him, that sort of mercurial thing where stuff, a million thoughts run through her face when she's acting. So that was really fun too.
I love that.
Yeah, that's great. I did a theater production when I was in grad school, and my director loves pulling people who aren't necessarily actors into like the acting realm. So I can see how that can be something that's just really gratifying, having been one of those people. So that's awesome.
Did it mesh well when you guys were working and doing it?
Oh yeah, it was a small production, like for the department. It wasn't like a big theatrical, like I wasn't anything huge, but for what it was, I think we did a good job. It's hard to say you did a good job at something like that when it's not your thing, but everyone said I did a good job. So yeah, and the play was written so well. When something's well written, I think that it really helps with people who aren't necessarily trained in something.
Performers, but what was great for us too is we did 2 weeks of rehearsal with the actors, and so we all worked together. And because the thing with television and with movies that aren't huge studio budgets is very often you have very little rehearsal time, so you're figuring out stuff on the day. Rehearsals are a misnomer in film and television. They're often just for the camera, basically for the camera to know where the movement is and all of that stuff. So to get ahead of the game in that way, and everybody felt very invested and knew the tone of the film, knew what world we were in. We brought the DP into the rehearsals so that he would see with the blocking. We talked about everything. We knew how we were shooting everything based on that. We had a lookbook for everything. And so it was really amazing because we really got to put the pre-prep time in, make such a huge difference, because everybody then is, they're already in a zone. They're already like exploring and discovering things. Because I can't tell you how many sets I've been on where you kind of are driving home and you're like, oh, if only I'd done that. And, we didn't want anyone to be saying that. We wanted it to be like, oh, I really was already, just discovering things take to take and not just trying to figure out like who my character was, so.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I love, you sound so passionate about this. It's really nice to hear someone talk so passionately about a project that they're working on. It's like, I don't know. I feel that way about, if I get like an essay published somewhere, I get really excited. So I feel like, and this is on a grander scale. So it's really nice. And I'm really happy for you. That's like really awesome.
Oh, thank you. We really made the film to have a dialogue, and it's been so extraordinary being at this juncture where I'm getting to talk to you about it. I'm getting to, talk when the viewers have seen it and having this, interaction about it. Dev and I say, if we'd seen a movie like this when we were 18, it would have changed the course and journey of our lives. I mean, it's helpful sometimes to know that like, oh, other people have this experience. And, as a society, we're not allowed to talk about certain things, especially when it's family. And I think that that's buckus. I think that it helps to actually shine a light on things and talk about things and say, the whole point of the movie is, there is another way. You don't have to live your life out of whatever past you come from. If it's not a healthy past, you don't have to keep making destructive choices. There is another way. I mean, my alter ego isn't very self-aware and is doing things, making choices that hopefully I'm not doing in my life anymore, but I did for a long time. And I think that that's, it's one of the other elements that we looked at is my husband and I said we'd never seen a movie where the voiceover sounded remotely like the thoughts running through our heads, either of us. And so we really wanted to look at like, well, where do those voices come from? And then, oh, well, a lot of those voices aren't your own authentic voice. They're really from your past. And how much are you letting that run the show? So it's just interesting.
So of course I have to ask you, we got to talk about Drusilla a little bit.
Yes, I would think so. Knowing the name of your show, I would think that we would be talking a little bit about this.
So I always ask all the Buffy folks so I ask all our guests what their Buffy origin is, but for folks that worked on the show, kind of your origin as in if you remember auditioning and if you remember like your first day on set and what that was all like coming into this character.
Yeah, well, first of all, I actually never auditioned for the role. I went in for a creative meeting. It was with Joss Whedon, David Greenwalt, Marcia Schulman, who was head of casting, Gail Berman, one of the producers, and had the most amazing meeting where we were just bouncing ideas off each other. Joss said, the character can be American or English. And I said, oh no, she needs to be English. If she was, from the 1800s, it would. And he said, yes, if I can get a Spike that's either English or can do the accent, I agree with you. I left that meeting just having had a ball. Like it was so creative and fun. I did a little of Drew in the room. I remember I sort of wafted up to the ceiling and talked to the ceiling for a moment or, did a little of Drew. And then before I'd even gotten to my car, my phone was ringing and my agent said, they've hired you for this. It's a recurring character because I didn't know. And they've hired you. And I said, well, wait, I haven't left the lot yet. Like I'm not, and they said, no, I know, but they, and it's funny because I had a similar thing with Tim Burton and Ed Wood. And it's it's great with really strong directors. They often sort of know quickly. It's not 9 auditions. It's not, they sort of, you come in, you connect, you work, and they're like fantastic. And in the instance with Buffy, I actually didn't even work. He knew, Joss knew my work from Ed Wood and from a couple other projects. And then I guess just the conversation and the way I did a little bit of Drew, they were like, yeah, that's that. So it was really fun. And then he called me in for the 5 final choices of Spike. And James and I just immediately had an incredible acting chemistry. And then I went into a meeting with Joss where he said, let me just fill you in on the whole lore. I've had Spike and Drew running around in my head for 10 years. And I said, oh, poor you, my goodness. And he told me all this stuff about her. And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to do that? Because everything he said was completely contrary. He said, she's delicate, but she's strong. She's childlike, but she's diabolical. But she's powerful. She's sweet, but she's diabolical. She's, childlike, but sensual. Like everything was like, he kept saying the complete opposite. And I thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to put all of these ingredients into one character? And then that's what made it so rich and so fun, is that she had so many layers and so much dimension.
Yeah, James actually was on the podcast and he had mentioned like how his audition was with you and how like he felt the two of you connected immediately. And it's there the moment you two are on screen together. I feel like Spike and Drew are, the Nancy and Sid of Buffy, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny that we were doing a panel not so long ago, and I said, that I was Sid. And he said, I always thought I was Sid. I was like, no. You were the blondie bear. You're like Nancy. I'm Sid. So apparently we both thought we were playing Sid for all those years.
I love that.
Sid and Sid, I guess. But it's it was really amazing. James has a theater background like I do. And so we just had a real, what they call moment to moment acting right from his audition, where there was a freedom of like, oh, you're doing this, why don't I do that? Like there was a dance that immediately happened. And we would, once James was cast, our first season, which was season 2, we would get the scripts a week in advance. And so we would get together and rehearse and come in with, really prepared and with a lot of ideas. And again, like I was talking about with our film, the more that you do that, just the freer you are. And they were delighted in terms of, because very often the blocking is where you're moving in a scene and all that stuff would be worked out, where they'd say, oh, that's great. We'll just use what you guys already have prepared. So it was really fun. And I think also from the very first rehearsal that we had, I remember saying to James, like, just feel free in terms of like when we're acting, touch me anywhere you want, do anything you want. I mean, we're two non-people, we're 2 demons who have been together for 200 years. There can be no shyness about like, it's funny always, like you're on a movie set and you're making dinner with your supposed husband and it's like, oh, I'm sorry. You have to immediately create that chemistry of a history. Otherwise it's not going to seem real. And I would imagine if you're together for 200 years, there isn't 1 inch of someone else's body you haven't seen or touched or been comfortable with to some degree. So it was like, we need to have that present, so there needs to be a freedom. Like, don't worry about anything. Let's just, wherever it needs to go, it needs to go, within the scenes, obviously.
Yeah.
That's great. In terms of that relationship, Drew always strikes me as like an artist. And I think has a lot to do with the way that you play her, obviously. And also now that I hear that about those sort of built-in contradictions of her characterization, that makes sense. But then like Spike is like, William the Bloody, like the poet, right? Like,
right.
Not necessarily, I'm a poet, not necessarily a good poet, according to the lore. So right. I wondered if like, that there was some sort of connection there with Drew's character as like an artist, like has the soul of an artist. And I guess she's a puppeteer, so that's a type of artist. And like Spike also as an artist, if you feel as though the two of you played them like as artists.
I think so. I think there was an element of clearly Drew moved to her own drummer. And I think that, and there's, you know, one of the reasons initially when I was saying to Joss, like, oh, she needs to be an English character, because, you know, the history, I mean, I grew up in England, and I, you know, speak as equally with an English accent as American accent, and often in roles. But one of the things is, you know, just culture is embedded in the society. You know, when you go to the theater, people from all you know, monetary class of whatever, I don't think there should be any class system, but in terms of just from every dynamic of society, are they, you know, people all, it's very different than America. It's not elitist. It's like you're sitting next to someone who works as a plumber or a bricklayer and someone who's in parliament, you know, and it's like, that's part of the culture. Everybody there has read Shakespeare. Everybody knows, you know, you go to museums and it's free. Like, you can just go in to see amazing artwork that's like this incredible centuries old pieces of art. So I think intrinsically in these characters, there's that European aspect as well of there's art is part of, you know, it's just part of what everybody eats, breathes, and sleeps. So I do think that that's an element that both characters had and that they related on for sure.
Awesome.
I love that. So I gotta ask, what is one of your favorite moments across either show, Buffy or Angel, of like Drusilla? Like, what your favorite moment you got to play?
You know, it's hard to pick a moment for me because it was just so much fun and working. It was such an incredible group of people. The writing was brilliant. So it's hard to pick a moment. I would pick 3 episodes because I would say School Hard because it was our first introductory episode and it was when we first got to play and get established. I would say Surprise because it's when Drew regains strength and becomes a force to be reckoned with. And she'd been weak and dying from the angry mob prior to that. And then I would say an episode of Angel called Reunion, where Darla and Drew team up. We eat the lawyers and we wreak havoc on, you know, Los Angeles. It was a particularly inventive and fun storyline, I think, for us to sort of be the big baddies in that, you know, that story arc.
That's one of my favorite like mini arcs on Angel, when like Drusilla comes to town and her and Darla are just like, they're in a wreck shit. They don't care. Like,
we're going for it. And I loved, you know, we actually were hoping that was going to go on for more episodes because we were like, oh, there's so much that could happen here. And I remember I actually asked for, I don't remember if it was Reunion or Redefinition, the one right after, but on one of those episodes, I wanted to bring Miss Edith back because she wasn't scripted. And they actually didn't have Miss Edith anymore. So the prop department made a new Miss Edith. And there were a number of episodes where I brought her that she hadn't been scripted. And I thought, oh, like, it'd be great. I think I need Miss Edith here. So, yeah.
I love that.
Poking at her eyes or, you know, doing something equally, grabbing her by the hair or doing something like that in the scene, you know.
I mean, it makes sense she would have her doll. It's her number one, right? Like,
absolutely. Oh, yeah. So
what's something that you didn't get to do as Drusilla that you would have liked to get to do?
I think maybe if they had like a sort of redemption arc would have been interesting to see how Drew would have reconciled everything, because she was obviously a very tortured character and an emotional character. So I think if it coming to terms with some of the damage would be interesting, because obviously Angel, the whole show is based on that and what he's sort of atoning for. And James got some of that when he had a soul. And so I think that would have been an interesting thing to see how this character who would grapple with that.
Interesting. Speaking of her madness, do you think that there's any roots in before she became a vampire, right? So I'm sure you thought a lot about like who that person was.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you think there's any root of madness before her trauma. So she was a devout woman in a time period, the 1800s, women are very oppressed. Mm-hmm. So just like considering those things.
I thought that, yes, she was at a time where women were suppressed and that she had, you know, certain avenues would have been available to her and all that. But I did feel like the trauma forged her, like the way that her family was killed, the way that Angelus followed her to the convent, killed all the nuns, her and him, Darla and himself like actually made love on top of her. Like there were all these things going on that were very twisted. It was a very incestuous relationship with the Angelus character. It was such a sort of warped and dark, rendition of what love and is. And so I always felt like as far as, the Spike and Drew love story was a healthy, I mean, as healthy as people, as vampires who go around, killing and eating people because they're vampires, but there was a sort of genuine connection that felt healthier in a way than the Angelus darker relationship. So I think I think she always had visions. In my interpretation, she always had visions, because we saw some of that, and that was like a big part of, and that would have been difficult in terms of it being accepted. But I think that the turn of events of everything that happened was so kind of almost strategically done to her by Angelus, because he liked the idea of creating someone who was going to live forever with madness. So I felt like it was sort of done in a very particular way that obviously was effective. So that was, my thing. But I don't know, what did you think?
I was curious what you thought, honestly. I think a lot about women in that time period.
Yeah.
It's funny, you forget like how evil Angelus is.
Yeah.
Because he's installed for like so much of the show that until you go back and you think about like what he did to Drew's character, you're like, oh man, like he was the worst.
Yeah, he's twisted, and you do forget it because you like him and you see him as a person who's then trying to save souls and help humanity for so much of it. But in the parts where he gets dark, and the parts where he ends up, becoming the guy who doesn't call after you sleep with him with Buffy, that whole stuff, he's done. And especially I think with Drusilla, it was a particularly strategically cruel way of that he behaved, clearly.
Yeah, you mentioned how he created Drusilla, and I'm curious if you think there's a relationship between siring and parenting. Because Drew, she never got to be a parent, but like she was able to create in a different way. And I guess Angelus as well sort of creates in this other way.
Yeah, well, I think, yes. And obviously Drew then sired Spike's character, and then brings Darla back to life. And
Right.
there is that whole, my grandmom, and she's also my daughter. Can we get any more incestuous? Yeah, I do think that there is that thing of sort of almost like that connection and parenting in terms of that lineage. And that's part of the reason why I think it was so twisted too, because the sexual relationship with Drew and Angelus, when he's sort of a parental figure, it's confusing to say the least, clearly.
Mm-hmm. Probably feeds into those contradictions as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you have Anne Rice and Charlene Harris in your film.
Yes.
So what are some of your other, aside from Buffy, your favorite like vampire like properties, movies, books, TV shows?
Gosh. Well, now I would say A Place Among the Dead, which, by the way, this is a t-shirt I just got today. I was so excited.
Ooh,
and
nice.
so you probably can't see the A Place Among the Dead on there, but we're so excited. They designed Modern Films as our distributor, and they've made this unbelievable merchandise. And so it's really, and they just sent us, it was like Christmas, a big box. So I was like, I have to wear it. So, but as far as other, I mean, there's so many one of the movies that I was just shooting is called Penumbra, and the producer directed Shadow of the Vampire, which was with Willem Dafoe and oh gosh, what's his name? I'm sorry, so tired because I haven't slept for a while. John Malkovich.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's an incredible movie. I think 30 Days of Night, our friend Steve Niles created the comic books and also the movie. And our composer, Monica Richards, is married to Steve. They're both so wildly talented. And that movie those vampires are terrifying. They're so dark and frightening, and they're shark-like. Obviously, the original Nosferatu and 1931 Dracula have been very iconic and sort of emblazoned into our consciousness. I think Gary Oldman's Dracula, Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula is beautiful and sort of operatic. Near Dark, Lance Henriksen, who's with us in the movie. Near Dark is Catherine Bigelow's one of her first movies, if not her first movie, and it's just wonderful. Movie with Bill Paxton as well. There's a lot. I don't know. What about you guys? Some of your favorite, if you?
I mean, I feel like a lot of Buffy fans, especially in the 90s, I was big on the Anne Rice stuff back in the day.
Yeah, Anne Rice is so incredible. I remember I read as a kid, Interview with the Vampire and the Vampire Lestat, like probably way too young. But it was so getting to work with Anne and I've read all of her books. Like I've read every book of Anne's, and same with Charlene. It's really incredible to get to work with people that have created these universes that have become a part of your being by, because there's nothing like books. There's nothing like reading and going. I mean, obviously I love movies and television, but there is something about your own interpretation and how you imagine something when you're reading a book that's really special.
I was just talking about that. So my mom's a big reader. That's where I get like my reading from. My mom actually is also a big Buffy fan. She's not the demographic for Buffy.
But Buffy has such a wide demographic that way, because the one thing with Buffy is families can watch it, unlike True Blood. I think you'd be really embarrassed to watch it with your family because the sex scenes are pretty full on out. And Buffy, you can actually watch with your family and as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember literally the first time I've told this story in the podcast a few times, but the first time I watched, my mom would watch it and she'd be like, "Oh, I think you would like this show." And I'd be like, "No, I won't, Mom." And then I watched her watching it on like our little tiny box TV that we had in the kitchen on the counter, and she was crying because Buffy had to kill Angel. And I was like, "Wait, what is this show?" And that's like when I got home.
Right, and then that was it. You were in, right? It's funny because with Joss said in a way, like he made the title, he liked the perversity of sort of that a lot of people would be like, I don't think I'm going to like that show. And then the minute they were in, like, they were like, wait, I really like that show. I thought it was going to be something really different with what the title is. Like, I thought it was going to be more in line with sort of other teen content that, which it has deeper resonance than that. So, and he also said he wanted to describe the different aspects of it, like Buffy. Okay, it's a female protagonist. It tells you there's vampires. She's a slayer. It tells you there's action. It has a sense of humor in what it is, that he wanted all of those things because he was blending in a certain way genres.
That's true. It's all there in the title. You're right. It is. So what universe would you say Drusilla could fit into? If she could go into another like vampire universe, what universe do you think she would fit into?
Well, it's interesting. There's a writer named Kim Newman, and he's actually in our film. And he's a film critic and a film historian as well. And he has created these books called Anno Dracula, this whole series. And Drusilla appears in it. It's a little bit like the sort of way that League of Extraordinary Gentlemen pools all the. So the vampires from every universe, like it's Dracula and Drusilla, and like they all are sort of in one universe. But let's see. I don't know. What do you guys think? I always thought this is not a vampire universe, but I always thought that it would be hysterical to have Drusilla and Captain Jack Sparrow interacting just because like Drusilla would be really wafty and then he would be really like sea legsy and like the whole scene would be just so like off the wall. So.
I mean, it would be poetry.
Yeah,
I would watch that.
I would watch that. It's funny because I feel like Drusilla I feel like she could very easily fit into almost any vampire universe because she could go into an Anne Rice type thing, but also she perfectly fits in Buffy clearly, which is not in the same vein. Yes. So I think her character is like a character that could she could even be on True Blood. I mean, she might not be as like vulgar as everyone. Right. She wouldn't probably like that, but I think she could fit.
Yeah, no, and True Blood was great. All the characters, for sure. She actually could, because there's something with Drew where there's this cross of things. I mean, we even talked about that with the wardrobe where, there's a cross of old world and Victorian. And then there's like, at the time, there was a whole model movement of kind of like the heroine chic fashion look. So we were crossing sort of these different time periods and different essences. And so in a lot of ways, the rich tapestry that Anne Rice creates, she could slip into that world for sure. And then very much like Charlaine Harris and Alan Ball, what they did with True Blood, she could have lived in Bon Tom, right? Isn't that what it's called?
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. She's an interesting character in that way, and that I think that because she also spans so much time, she could fit in. Yeah, absolutely. I think with almost all of them.
I don't know. Have you watched or heard of What We Do in the Shadows?
Yes, I love it. It's great.
It's so freaking funny, but I think Drusilla would even fit as like a higher up vampire like they're clearly like the lower level ones, but she would be like a higher vampire in their
more
level.
Powerful. Yeah, it'd be so much fun. Actually, it's funny because before lockdown, I was like, I want to go on that show. Like, it would be so much fun. So I was writing a letter to the creator, and then I haven't, because of COVID and because of our other projects. I haven't sent it or done it, but I was thinking about it because I was like, oh, it'd be so great. I mean, whether it could be a different character altogether, but if Drusilla could definitely have some fun, I think.
I mean, they had Paul Rubens because he was on the movie Buffy, so I feel like you would make sense. Like, have you and James cameo as like, ooh, are they?
And Paul Rubens has like one of the best death scenes ever in the Buffy movie. I mean, it's just so hysterical. Like, it goes on and on and on in such a funny way. When I first got the series, Joss actually said, don't watch the movie because of the tone. Like, it isn't what I'm doing with the series. And I'm basically doing the series because I created it, and the movie went in a more campy, different direction than what I want to do with the show. So I listened to him, and I actually didn't watch it for years. And then finally I'm like, I can watch it now. I'm allowed. I can do it. And I watched it, and it's so great. I mean, like, the Paul Rubens death scene is one of those that once you see it, you never don't think of it. It's just so funny. Like,
for me, that's like the scene of the movie.
It is. I mean, it just is the thing that you're like, and his timing in it is just so funny.
Yeah.
So I feel like Drusilla is a very much embodied character, and the way you play her really makes the character who she is. So I was wondering about how you feel of her living on in the Buffy comics, sort of without you. I mean, I know you're there, like, pulling the strings in some of the writing, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did a 2-episode arc that I co-wrote with Brian Lynch, and that I was very involved with, and came up with the storyline, and a lot worked really hard with the artists on their artwork, and had references and the color palette and all that stuff. I was very involved. In the other Dark Horse series, I haven't been involved, and I actually have to catch up with it. So I don't know what's happened to Drew. I mean, I'm excited to see sort of wherever she lives, hopefully it's done well, because she's a dynamic and multifaceted character that is really interesting. How have you guys felt about the comic trajectory?
I really liked. I thought there was so much coming out. I did really like. I liked Drusilla's the way they had. I forget how they got there, but it was like she was a little bit more coherent in Angel and Faith. I actually really liked that, and I thought it felt organic for her character.
Right.
And lots of times with those comics, I kept thinking, because all of y'all are such good actors, I was like, crap, I wish we could have gotten Juliet doing this.
You see what it was. Yeah. Thank you.
But so what's your favorite Drusilla outfit?
Gosh, Cynthia Bergstrom is so extraordinarily talented, and she built like the it's hard for me to pick because they're all, but she built the from scratch, the black and purple one when Drew is sort of strong again, that black and purple kind of chiffon one, and it was fun because it had sleeves that for some of we did a photo shoot at Warner Brothers Ranch, I think it was, and I said to the photographer, "Oh, can I play with some of this?" And one of the most used Drusilla pictures is that one where I have the sleeve kind of hanging over my face. So that was a really wonderful outfit. I remember when also in Surprise, when my character gets strong and I'm sort of having my coming out party, there's a maroon dress that also I had asked for a scarf, and then said, oh, could we attach it here, so that I basically had something to work with when I was moving and dancing. I love when wardrobe, it's practical too. Like, you kind of feel like how you can use it in the scene. And then, I'm probably mentioning all of Drew's outfits, right? The original white little, Empire, innocent looking dress, very childlike and sort of sweet. And then I spent a lot of time in the red corset and that whole look. We had multiples, and we had them, of course, for the stunt doubles and all that stuff too. So there was a lot of, and I can't say necessarily that being in a corset is the most comfortable thing in the world. So I don't know that I loved being in it, but I did love, in terms of it informs your posture. You carry yourself like someone from another area, because you can't carry yourself any other way. So, it's not the most comfortable to have that boning on, and we shot 12 to often sometimes 17-hour days. But it looks great and it was perfect for her. So I like it.
Yeah, we had Cynthia on the podcast earlier this year, actually. And I couldn't believe all the stuff that she built for
she
characters.
built so much stuff. And they had a really interesting thing. I don't know if she talked to you about that. Buffy never wore the same outfit twice. So she'd wear it if it was continuity, like the same day and night. Yeah. Scenes. But other than that, she never, she obviously had the most ideal for the time, high school girls wardrobe that you could wear a different outfit every single day. But I don't know if she had talked to you about that, but it was an interesting choice. Never had her repeat, like she never wore, the same dress like 2 episodes later or anything.
That's
amazing.
Once you said that, it's like, oh yeah, duh, that makes sense. But I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, I guess she always did have a different outfit.
Yeah, it was a creative choice. Like they specifically decided that they just wanted that to be like, they didn't want it to be the realistic thing that you're like, oh, I wear this dress every few weeks and I wear this cardigan over and over. They wanted that hyper real and kind of, the other thing that was interesting in the color palettes in the shooting as well as the wardrobe is the Scooby Gang and the school was all very bright and daylight and and then the vampire world were much darker and much more filmic the way it was shot. The DP Michael Gershman talked about that he wanted that to look almost like at that time it was different where there was a division sort of between film and television, and he really wanted the vampire world to be much more filmic. And now, of course, with streaming, everything's sort of everything. There's big budgets. Game of Thrones looks like a feature, all different. But at that time, there was, a sort of differentiation. And he wanted to bring some of those filmic, darker elements into the vampire world, which Cynthia did with the wardrobe, too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like all of the wardrobe is pretty iconic on Buffy, like from Drusilla's dresses to Buffy's, whatever season 1 baby doll dress. All those outfits are so and of the time, but still you think of them now, right?
Yeah. I would agree for sure. I mean, some of our hairdos probably have not dated as well, but
it's funny. I feel like all of you kind of feel the same way, especially the women, because the women got to wear way more different outfits and Cynthia even said,
for my character, that was because it was much more classic. Like my hair is sort of done much more like period do's. But I know some of the other cast members, because we're all still friends, are like, oh my God, I have, whatever those, the way that I had the feathers or whatever,
Wait, was that always your real hair, or were those extensions, the bun, when she would have a bunch of buns?
It was funny because we would here's the secrets of the tale, but as my character got stronger and stronger and stronger, we added more and more hair. So I definitely started getting more and more extensions and more pieces, and they were all clip-in, but so we'd have so it was great because as she got more and more, into her whole diabolical, fulsome self, my hair got fuller as well.
I love the idea of you having more power, so your hair's bigger. I love that.
Yeah, it's great. Well, then the same thing, we evolved the Drew, I had the French manicure, and when my character was weak, it was black with white tips. And when I get strong, it's red with white tips. I mean, that's the thing when you're working on something where every department is invested and interested, and all of the choices are going, are lining in and creative and feeding the character. There's nothing better than that.
That's awesome. I'm big into the zodiac. So I'm an Aries, you're an Aries. We have that. Yeah, we're the best, obviously. But I never it never struck me that Drew was necessarily an Aries. The internet all says she's one thing. I was curious if you ever played her with her sign in mind and what you think it would be if you did, or even if you didn't.
You know what? I did have when Drew was born, because I have I always do a character bio. I do all, I have like boxes, and I keep each character, and I have obviously a number of boxes in our garage of Drusilla stuff. But I can't actually remember now what did you think she was? I don't remember. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Well, I know what I thought, and the internet agrees with me, so that's always good. But she struck me as a Pisces.
That would make sense.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense too, because it's March is part of Pisces, and you're March. There. I don't know if you have any Pisces in you, but like that would make sense to me too. Like when I saw you were in Aries, I was like, oh, that's surprising. But I'm like, no, you're just thinking of Drew, Kim.
Right.
So yeah,
I definitely have the Aries. I know Aries, one of the characteristics is definitely being sort of tenacious and stubborn, because we have the ram sign. I know I have a little of that. My husband is over here. I hear him going, So I definitely, but it's also a good quality to have as a filmmaker and as an actor, because as a friend said, it's a kind of famous quote, you need the soul of a poet and the skin of an armadillo to do what we do. And so in some ways that tenacity, I think, is important, because you need to sort of be, there through all the punches, which definitely, being a creative person, you get some punches. So.
Yeah, and I mean, you're a director too now, like you're a filmmaker. You're not just an actress, which is a very Aries thing to me too. We like to, with the Ram, we like to like take charge. I know you talked a little bit about being an actress and how COVID has affected you, but do you want to talk a little bit more about how COVID has affected your work as an actress and a filmmaker and just an artist in general?
Well, I mean, it's been such a scary time in general. And, we're thankful that we've been safe and well, and we've been sequestering and doing everything. But it's been, crazy in terms of, we went sort of from overnight, not obviously scientists and people knew that this was a possibility, but I think most of us weren't sort of aware how, so it became all of a sudden like, oh, to see people in masks was sort of shocking, right? I mean, you felt like you had descended into a zombie movie immediately without sort of, but thankfully, we've been okay, and everybody that our friends have all been well and stuff. It's been odd in terms of work and every, the world, I guess, being on hold. It was fortunate work-wise that we had completed our film literally just before lockdown. Like our screenings, our sneak peeks were like the week before lockdown. And so we were able to move forward on that project, and also on our other series project. We've shot 80% of it. So we've been able to do so much work during this time, which we're grateful for, because a lot of people haven't been able to. And then now when some things are opening back up, it's been interesting. Ron Perlman, when we were coordinating with him for one of the panels that we were doing, he's shooting in Canada, and Canada's been very careful in terms of their protocols for shooting. So he was doing Guillermo del Toro's Nightmare Alley, and they had 2 weeks he had to be in the hotel room, who wasn't allowed to go out. And he had a co-star that was a regular on a TV series, not a friend, someone he met there, who apparently after a couple days got restless and went out to dinner. And he was not only thrown out of the country, fired from his job, his series regular job, but he was fined $750,000. And so Ron was funny, because he's like, I'm even scared to open my door when they deliver food. And he's like, because they're taking it seriously, which I'm grateful for. But he's like, I open my door a crack and I take my food and I close the door. It's obviously, been affecting globally, everybody working. I don't know, how have you guys been affected with everything?
Well, Kim, you're a professor, so I feel like you should speak to that.
I'm a professor in Alabama, though, so it's.
So were you working remotely at all, like doing Zoom, or have you been actually going in? Because
so I gave birth in March, like right when this started, and I was already teaching online, so I didn't have to worry about it then. But I mean, I respect my department and the way that they've handled everything at the department level, for sure. But they have me I have 2 online classes and 2 hybrid classes.
Okay.
So, and then next semester we're apparently going back to normal.
Wow.
As a writer though,
Right.
you know, as a poet, it's been interesting. It's really generative in some ways. Like there's just you see the world in a new way, I guess. Like you know, all these things you never thought could happen are suddenly happening. So it gives me something to write about. You know, it makes me look at the world in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I read this article earlier in the New Yorker about they're doing these 5 short films of like dance, and they're all
Oh,
like COVID inspired. So I
right.
think it's all from the New York Ballet actually. And
Oh,
they specifically chose people and had them use the area outside around
right.
Lincoln Center. And
Oh,
it was just fascinating to me how like they took something bad and they made something good out of it.
beautiful out of it.
Yeah.
I saw a thing from all the Juilliard students with it, where it was musicians and dancers early in COVID, and they were all dancing and they were futures, like past, not future, past students and also current students. And so it had BB Newirth, who is, was, had been a student, all these different people dancing in their different places all over the world, and it was so touching and beautiful, and
Mhm.
everybody's obviously was staying sort of in shape and active and creative in their own environments. And so yeah, it's been amazing seeing some of that stuff. It's like the flowers growing through the cracks in the sidewalk,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've
Have you felt any, sorry, Ian.
oh no, I was just gonna say I I work retail as my day job and I'm like a freelance writer. And I get like weird spurts, like right, because we're in quarantine and it's like I feel like I should be able to like write 3 novels at this point, but I have not.
Right.
Um, but then with things like I feel like with like doing this podcast, I've been able to, those are things that it's like I send out an email, I schedule a thing. I've been able to like concentrate on those things a lot more.
Right.
Um, because of course it requires thinking and us talking, but writing and having the ideas and like that I've had trouble with because it's like I'm home so often. I
Right.
mean, I just started back at my job like 2 months ago. Um, and yeah, so I keep going back and forth where I'm like, I'm being more productive in one area, but not in the area. Like I wish I had written a book by now.
Also hard because I think collectively there's been so much stress, and with the election, with the sort
Yeah.
of so much hateful behavior going on, and like so much stuff, i- it's been and then there's this, you're dealing with virus and people are dying, and like it's
Right.
so in terms of I think it's because a friend of mine was talking to me and he was saying, oh my god, it's been amazing and what's happening with your movie, and I'm feeling like I wanted to write a script and I'm not doing, and I was like, everybody's processing things. There's a lot to process. And so don't beat yourself up. Like you'll do what you do when you can do it. And that's part of this whole thing, is that we're in territory that none of us have been in before, and you're processing a lot coming at you that's hard to deal with. So
Yeah, I was trying to schedule any recordings for the podcast after the election because I was like, I want like even if it went the bad way, it was like, okay, at least we know no one's like stressing about like the unknown.
right, because it was like I kept saying to Deb, it's like going to the doctor with some like health thing, and you're waiting for these results, and you're like, okay, is the bad news? I just want to know one way or the
Like
other.
take the band-aid
Yeah.
off. Yeah.
It's like the protracted waiting was just so like we literally our shoulders were like, oh, and we heard people, our whole neighborhood, like literally for 15 minutes people were just screaming
Oh, I
out
love that.
doors, and it literally was like, we're like, oh my god, I think the results are in, because we heard everybody going, like it was just amazing.
It's funny. I mean, I'm sure we all were like obsessively looking at the map, right? And it was like the 2 minutes that I wasn't looking at the map, a
Right.
friend just
Same
texted
here.
me in all caps, oh shit. And I was like, is that a good oh shit or a bad oh shit? But it was a good oh
Right.
shit.
Right. I know it was wild because the same thing, and also we've been working so much and working,
Right.
doing press and doing all that stuff. And we did the same thing. We decided, crafted like the actual, we're playing at Lumley now, we're doing these events, but we decided to stagger the events not around the election, and
Right.
then open worldwide December 14th rather than around the election. But the same thing. So we've been working a lot and stuff, but obviously checking and being like, there's no change, there's no change, there's no
Right.
change. And then all of a sudden we hear screaming. We're like, we weren't checking. We missed the moment, but luckily we were like, okay, but it was just the same kind of thing where we're like, wait, we're hearing people screaming, something's going on.
yeah, my boss had been in Philadelphia and like we're friendly and I texted him, was like, oh, did you hear the good news? And he texted me a video. He walked outside and there was just like cars honking and everyone cheering. Like, And I was like, "Ugh, this warms my heart."
It does. I mean, it was such a close, that was the thing I think that was
Yeah.
hard to see, is that, is just how tight it was, and so that it's been, and I'm sure stressful on both sides for that reason.
Right.
But it was funny because it went on for like 15 minutes. We live in the Hollywood Hills, and so
Oh, nice.
obviously this area was particularly jubilant, and so it was very cool because it was like, we should record this. It was the way it was sort of echoing in people, and like the whole thing, the way that people were screaming and what they were saying, and we were like, sounds like some sort of abstract amazing art thing going on. So
Right, because if that was in a movie, you might be like, that's unrealistic and cheesy.
too
That
much.
wouldn't happen. Yeah.
That actually happens a lot with movies. It's funny because I know when I was working on Ed Wood, it was actually based on a book by Rudolph Gray called Nightmare of Ecstasy, and he had knew a lot of the characters that were around the real filmmaker Ed Wood, and the dialogue that my character had that seemed the most like there's no way that was actually transcripted. So it's funny sometimes when you're like, the things that seem the most wildly inaccurate or something are the things that are actually true, right?
And I mean, I guess that's kind of been like most of 2020, right? Things
You
that you'd
took
be
the
like,
words right out of my mouth. Yeah, I'm about to say that all of this year.
I saw like a tweet that was like, ooh, if I'm editing the book of 2020, I'm going to say, take out 1 or 2 of these plots as there's too many.
It's funny. That's what somebody said to me early, like somewhere in the mid, my writer friend said, it feels like really like a TV show on its last season when they're putting too many plot points in and we need some recasting, like desperately. So funny.
Actors keep walking in and out of the show.
Right, like, what's going on? We need some stability, and there's just so many plot points. Like, we're trying this, and then we're trying this, and we're trying. It's like, oh no,
just get rid of the murder hornets. We just don't need those.
So before we wrap up, a fan, so I put on Instagram that we were interviewing you, and a fan did ask if you were ever bummed you never got to portray Drusilla getting dusted, because Angel, Darla, Spike, all of them got to be dusted and come back, but Drusilla never did.
Well, I guess if she could have come back, I sort of like that I evaded. I was one of the ones that never, like, I'm still undead out there,
Yeah.
sort of like that she evaded demise. And there's something kind of like, I sort of feel like she's out there traveling the world, creating mayhem in her way, and I sort of like that, that it never came down to it. But if they were going to bring her back again so that she was able to still be out there, then maybe that would be okay. I just sort of like she was one of the ones that didn't get, it's kind of cool. She's not dead, or she's not undead. She's still undead.
Almost everyone I've spoken to from the show who played a villain, they'd be like, if their character died, even if it was a villain, they're like, oh, I wish my character had lived. Or if they were a villain, like, I'm glad my character lived.
You get very, it's funny because even, so after there was a particular point where my husband and I said, I've seen all of Buffy and Angel, but I don't think I've ever seen it in the correct order, because when I was on it, we watched my episode and I sort of saw it, but I didn't see it in the way, the whole arc that it should be seen. So we watched the whole thing. And he was laughing at me because I was on the couch, and I guess I literally went, when he was with Buffy, and I was like, I just don't see what he sees in that cheerleader. He looked over at me and he's like, Juliet, like, there's a piece of you that, if you've lived with a character that long, that you kind of have that connection to the thought process, and you're sort of like, I mean, really, you're going to leave a 200-year strong relationship? Come on. You're still inside that mindset. So he thought it was very funny because he'd hear me humming and hawing on certain things where it was very much from Drusilla's viewpoint.
And the other question on Instagram was from the author Kirsten White. She writes Buffy novels. Yeah. She asked how you captured Drusilla's specific movements, because you kind of move with the dialogue. And was that you? How was that created? It
was me. It was that element of the sort of physicality of Drew, and I chose, in terms of the accent, I chose a specific region and a specific person that I worked with and off of, listened to a lot. But with the rest of the ingredients of Drew, it got to be more sing-song and lilty because of her, all of the rest of her. And definitely the physicality was something that sort of came out of the choices that I made. And then Joss was really happy with it. And so it evolved from there. But it was interesting to arrive at how, I started working from after that moment when Joss said, you know, all of those disparate things. I went home and started sort of playing. I always put together a soundtrack for each character. So Drusilla had a specific soundtrack, and I love it. And it was funny because on A Place Among the Dead, when in the rehearsal period, I was working with the actors and I was telling them how I do that. And so many of the actors showed up. I created Frankensteins. They all had their iPods with the soundtracks. But one of the things that's great is because when you're working on a character and you listen to that music over and over, and then the minute you just hear it, it's like we all have, there's songs you hear and it takes you right back to whatever particular experience. And it's like a nostalgic or whatever, or a terrible experience, whatever it is, you immediately sort of almost sensorially have that visceral feeling. And so, so music is great that way, because sometimes on set, you know, you, like literally one little note and you're like, oh yeah, I'm back in, like I know this character. So there's many ways, but I think it's once you put all those ingredients in, you know, you have your ways that you access for each character. And I really enjoy like that element of things. The character that I played on Bosch, her name was Rita Tedesco, and she moved like my husband was like, who is that? Like I've never seen, you know. And same with a friend of mine at the time when she saw Drew, she was like, I don't recognize you, like the you I know in that character at all. It's so weird. And, you know, she moved, I'm very speedy as a person, and she obviously had this languid, you know, sort of way. And I love that element. I love watching people, and physicality tells you so much about how a character feels about themselves or how they're related to, or, you know, all of that stuff. So Drew, it was there, that sort of came naturally with all the rest of the ingredients, and moved from there.
Okay, I gotta ask, since you mentioned it, name, like, do you remember like any of the songs on your Drusilla playlist?
I do, but I'm not going to tell. My own personal secret. Although it was funny because someone said, "Oh, you know, you should release that as a like something." And it would be like this thing, like, "Oh, but what was funny is I remember doing a TV Guide interview, and David Boreanaz was making fun of me because he was said, "Okay, well, this is Juliet on set. Do you want to run lines? Do you want to rehearse? Do you want to run lines? Do you want to rehearse? Do you want to rehearse? Do you want to run lines? Do you want to run lines?" And then he'd go like this, and he'd put on the mirror. And I was like, "Stop it." And he goes, "No." And then she'd all of a sudden be this like totally different, you know, unlike Juliet, you know, Drusilla would emerge. So
that's so smart. It's so smart. I make a playlist I started doing it like a year and a half ago. So every 2 months, so like January, February, you know, March, April, etc. And you're right. All I have to do is like go back and play my January, March 2018 playlist, and like I am there. Like I know why I chose the songs. Sometimes like specific memories, I have access to them. So like as an actress and like as a filmmaker, like that's so smart.
It is. It's interesting because we even talked about that. We scored the movie afterwards, and I worked very closely with our composer, who's amazing. Her name is Monica Richards, and it's a very underrepresented. I think it's something like 17% of film composers are female, and we didn't choose her because she was female. We chose her because we just thought she was phenomenal. And it's such an integral part of the movie, and any movie, but there's a lot of soundtracks that almost sound like this is the sound of the moment and everyone's doing the same thing. And our movie is it's its own animal, and we needed it to be like a tapestry in its own element. And so working with her was amazing, but we were even talking about our next project that we would do with her. We might do it the way Sergio Leone did, where and actually Francis Ford Coppola did it with The Conversation, where you have some of the themes and stuff scored ahead of time, so you can actually play it for the actors, and you can play it on set. And Quentin Tarantino does it often. Borrows other soundtracks, but he plays that stuff on set, and then you can see when it's cut, like it's all like so intrinsically, like the music is a part of it. So it's interesting that you're talking about the way you do that, because it seems like a tool that would be cool to do in filmmaking, you know, in a different way than we incorporated it this time.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, this past you said something that made me think of this. This past year was like one of the first times that a woman wrote the score that won the Oscar or something.
Yes.
It was like recently.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's good. That's awesome that you said you used a woman to score your film.
Yes.
Yeah. Good job.
So we had Stacey Abrams on the podcast earlier this year. And we kind of asked her who she thought, if there was anyone that might have voted for Trump. And she said, if Drusilla got her citizenship, she might have liked the chaos and voted. Maybe. What do you think?
I don't think so. I think Drew liked creating her own chaos. I think she would have, I don't think so. I think she, I can't see with the people she surrounded herself with. I don't think so.
I'm with you. So one time I'll disagree with Stacey Abrams.
But I know what she's saying about chaos. Chaos definitely was, but you know, there was a logic to Drew's chaos, believe it or not. And it's a little harder to find that logic.
That's fair.
In the other scenario. So,
very
for
fair.
me, personally.
For me too.
Yeah, Kim.
So what can fans of yours expect from you in the near and farther future?
Well, absolutely. Well, the worldwide opening of A Place Among the Dead is December 14th. We're having a bunch of special screening events, which will be interactive, and the next one's on November 21st. I shot a movie called Penumbra that will be coming out, and TNT's Claws as well that I was just working on again. And we have another project that is pretty amazing, and all of the people that worked with us came back to work with us again from A Place Among the Dead. And it's completely unscripted. It's documentary. It's an interview show. I'm the host. And we also, besides all of our incredible artists that came on A Place Among the Dead, we also interviewed Tim Burton and Willem Dafoe, and just an unbelievable cast as well. So lots of stuff cooking. And if people want to see A Place Among the Dead, the best place, our distributor is Modern Films. So modernfilms.com/A Place Among the Dead. You can get tickets for any of the cinema runs and or the special events as well.
And let everyone know where they can find you online and everything.
Yeah. Okay. On Twitter, I'm at Juliet Landau. On Instagram, I'm Juliet_Landau. And then on Facebook, Fans of Juliet Landau is the page that I am most active on, and I moderate it. It's all me. So those places that are good.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you doing this.
It's been so much fun.
Thank you all for listening. If you want to find Slayerfest 98, you can find our podcast at Slayerfest X98 on social media. You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and other corners of the internet. And you can support us on Patreon, which helps keep this podcast going. And we'll see you all next time. Bye, guys.